Well, okay, yeah, it's 7:02. So I'll tap my virtual gavel here and order into session Town of West Newbury Planning Board meeting for February 4th, 2025. I've got 7:02. And the first thing on the agenda is a few public hearings. And who is there? We don't have a planning board crier, but we do have somebody who's supposed to read the legal notices, and I forget which position that is and who has it.
It's the clerk, and Katrina was kind enough to put this up since I did not copy it. So my bad, but I'll be happy to read that.
Read that.
Okay, the West Newbury Planning Board will hold a virtual public hearing on Tuesday, February 4th, 2025, 7 p.m. to consider and report on the following proposed amendments to the Town of West Newbury zoning bylaw. 1. To amend section 4.2.4 accessory dwelling units by making changes that will bring the existing zoning into compliance with the new requirements for accessory dwelling units contained within the Affordable Homes Act. 2. To create a new section called Battery Energy Storage Systems to provide a regulatory scheme for the location, construction, and operation of battery energy storage systems, consistent with best practices and safety protocols. 3. To amend Section 8.1 Floodplain Overlay District by making changes that will bring it into compliance with the minimum requirements of the recent changes to the National Flood Insurance Program, including changing the permitting authority from the Planning Board to the Floodplains Administrator. Excuse me, the current zoning bylaw, along with texts of the proposed amendments, are on file with the town clerk. To view the proposed changes, visit the mentioned here Planning Board website or contact landadmin@westnewbury.org. And I think that's the
There
rest
you
of
go.
the Zoom code, and I think that covers it.
Thank you very much. So the public hearing then is now in session. And doesn't seem like we have a tremendous number of public members here tonight. I'm wondering, what do you think the best way is to go about this? Let's start, of course, with the auxiliary dwelling units, and I'll point out to people, we've got a couple of people here that we have Sam with us, and it's not zoning enforcement officer, it's something more impressive. What is it, Sam? Your title these days?
I got a whole bunch.
What's your most impressive one in West Newbury?
I guess building commissioner.
Commissioner, the commissioner. That's
Yes.
the word I was looking for.
There we go.
Anyway, to the
Very
members,
important.
yes, well, it is. It is. To the members of the public that are here who are interested in these zoning bylaws, our commissioner, of course, is very familiar with the language and what led up to these changes that we're proposing. So starting with the auxiliary dwelling units, we had a bylaw in place. Then the state came along and decided that there would be a state bylaw, and it pretty much matched what we had, but there were some differences. So the commissioner went through that and attended a whole bunch of meetings and whatnot, and then suggested these changes to the bylaw to bring it into compliance with the Commonwealth's bylaw. We could share the screen and go into the details, but maybe all we need to do is take a look at the particular changes from the existing bylaw. Let's see here. I think I can do this. Let me share the screen.
I'm sorry, I may have to go get the current version of the ADU draft because I'm not sure you, oh, you did get the right one. Okay.
I've got the right one here, don't I?
Yes, you do. The link.
Okay, good. Let's see here. So I think I've got it here. Here's section 4.2.4. And you can see that some language is being, that we're proposing to strike some language in the current West Newbury bylaw to bring it into, to make it align with the state. Really the only real significant change, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Sam, is that we had an owner occupancy requirement prior to the state's bylaw. And we can no longer keep that requirement in our town bylaw. The state requires that we remove that. Have I got that right, Sam?
Yep, absolutely.
Here, could I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yes.
I believe this is the wrong version.
I think so.
Yeah, and I have the right version.
Okay.
here.
This is from the packet this morning, but I'll stop the share.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That is like an October 30th version. And
Oh,
so I'm going to share my version here, which looks quite different.
okay.
Sam, does that look more familiar?
Not quite yet.
Yeah, don't see it.
It's coming. There we go.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I can give a brief update on this
Thank you, Sam.
because, as you can see, pretty much everything's been struck.
That's
So-
what I remember. Yeah. Yep.
When the Affordable Homes Act was released, we had 180 days before Section 3 of 48.3 became active, which allows accessory dwelling units as of right. EOHLC has just posted the promulgated CMR Code of Mass Regulations as of, I think, the 27th, but they are on the website now.
I think today they just posted the official ones.
Did they? Okay,
Yep.
good. So I was working directly with EOHLC, the Mass Federation of Building Officials, Office of Public Safety and Inspection to try and get some consensus on the regulations, which is 760 CMR Section 71. It's better. It's about as good as we could get without missing a deadline of February 2nd to get them released. So what I have done in both West Newbury and Groveland at this time is struck all the language for accessory dwelling units, put in 40A, which is the Mass General Law, and the CMR for protected use ADUs. And I think if you scroll down, there was a special permit section that I believe I kept in there where we can allow for slightly larger through a special permit process. The reason I did this is, the reason I struck everything is because there's a lot of confusion out there. Some of it's getting cleared up. This brings us into compliance with Massachusetts regulations as required. It gives us the ability to issue the special permits. Coming soon will be guidance documents and a draft mass zoning, ADU zoning template that will play out for the cities and towns to use. So I figured that short term, this is our best bet to just adopt the state reg, keep in the special permit piece. It really doesn't change much more than that October version that we had, other than everything just refers back to the state regs.
I'm gonna jump in here.
Sure.
Katrina, if you could stop sharing for a sec, and then I'm gonna jump in. Just because I bet you a whole bunch of people haven't seen this, and this is basically what we will be this is the state law that would now replace our current AD.
So the state law is one definition in section A of 40A. I mean, it's section 1 of 40A, which is the definitions for accessory dwelling unit, and then 1 in 40A3, which is your protected ADUs, which also falls in a section that deals with Dover Amendment issues, which is why I decided, because of that placement in 40A3, I wanted to get the regulations, guidance, and a template from the state on what they would think would be reasonable or unreasonable based on the Dover Amendment court cases.
Gotcha.
So this is the regulation that gives a lot of guidance. This will help significantly for interpretation of the Mass General Law, because it was very just open to interpretation. This nailed down a lot of things. So it's better.
Yeah,
not
and
perfect.
I think the thing that people, I think things that people may be most interested in would be the size, which is in here in the definition.
Haven't
Yeah.
seen that before.
Yeah, so they defined gross floor area and what's allowed. So you get gross floor area, which is half the principal dwelling unit, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. The other thing to keep in mind is they did define principal dwelling unit as well. That could be a 1-family, 2-family, or 3-family or more. So you could potentially have a multi-family, and we really don't have much for anything more than 2 families in town, but even a 2-family would be potentially allowed to have that accessory dwelling unit. So that's very interesting. It's also in a single family zone, so it's any zone that would allow a single family as of right. So if, say, the business zone allowed that, then you could also have that. If you have a non-conforming lot, it would be allowed. And if you had a I forgot what I was going to say.
That's fine.
It's
That's
like-
Tim, I
fine.
have a question, if I could.
Sure.
I do too.
So this will be adopted, hopefully, at town meeting. The regulations and the state law went into effect today. What are you gonna do between now and town meeting if someone comes in and applies for a permit and it's obviously an accessory dwelling unit?
I have to apply state law.
Use the
State law trumps local zoning.
Mhm.
So whether we adopt this or not, that's what we've adopted as of February 2nd. It just kind of solidifies and avoids confusion by adopting it in our bylaws until such time that we decide to make additional changes based on what we get, I guess, get a better understanding of what is a reasonable or unreasonable restriction. It's very loosely defined. And again, they point to the Dover Amendment. I think overall, most of the restrictions, if we have a requirement for a single family dwelling or an accessory structure, and we apply those same restrictions to an ADU, it seems the general consensus is that is reasonable. So height restriction, dimensional requirements, bulk, all those things. There is some arguments where you could make maybe not. The other thing to keep in mind is all other codes still come into play. So your health codes, conservation, building codes. This is not a get out of jail free card for doing things not compliant. So if you cannot fit a septic system that would comply, then you cannot have the ADU.
And just to be clear, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
Sam, as we just kind of scroll through those definitions, what jumped out at me was a modular unit.
Yes.
Can you shed some light on that? Is that
Modular,
mobile home?
no, modular is different than mobile.
Yeah.
So modulars are factory built homes that are shipped on a truck and put in place. They are mass certified to meet the building code. So it's the same as a stick built, it's just built in a factory and delivered. So yes, if it's on wheels, that is a whole different thing. Even if you take the wheels off, that is not modular. That is
And
mobile.
so if somebody came to you and with a unit and they jacked it up, took the wheels off that and tried to tack it on their house.
Not gonna
I'm just,
happen.
I hadn't seen that wording before. That's why.
Yep. Modular has been allowed in Mass since the building code went into effect in 1974. It is certified offsite by a Massachusetts state inspector that is tasked with certifying the units. So mobile homes, things like that, trailers would not have that certificate in it
Don't
and
have
would not be allowed.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, there's this section on unreasonable regulation. And I may be missing it because I'm just reading it quickly here, but the idea of requiring owner occupancy for some period of time, that would be considered an unreasonable regulation?
Yes, the state through their the Affordable Homes Act has determined that is not allowed, so it is no longer reasonable.
Okay,
So whether we like it or not, or think it's reasonable or not, and that's why I was reluctant to keep much of the bylaw, because I wanted to make sure we got better clarification on the guidance as far as what's reasonable and unreasonable, what would be allowed and not. I think overall, what we'll get in town is the same as what we've been getting. The only real difference for us is that owner occupied piece and the ability to put it on a non-conforming lot without any type of additional process other than what we put a single family through.
good. All right. This is a public hearing. And so our typical way of conducting the public hearing is to sort of have a presentation. We did that. And then planning board members have a chance to ask questions and receive answers. And then we open it up to the public. So planning board members, any questions? Yes, Ann.
Yep, I just have a procedural question, I guess, really for Sam. So do you anticipate that we will take another round with this in which we make our definitive West Newbury bylaw once all these various guidelines and stuff have come out, and we'll go either to fall town meeting or next spring and have a final version?
Yeah, I think the idea is once I see what, if or what there's any issues with what we have or what other cities and towns are doing, who gets sued over what, and what the end result is there further protections for us? Is there other restrictions that we want to put on? Do we want to allow, the law allows you to be less restrictive? So I think for now, like I said, whether we adopt it or not, this is in place currently. For the time that we don't have something adopted, just erasing what we have, having that go through, allowing us the special permit for enlarging it, and then coming up with some criteria at a later date based on the results of what we see, what the citizenry is asking. If, like I said, if we want to open the door for more, we can offer 2 ADUs on a lot if we wanted. That would be legal under the act, but at this point, I think best practice would be to just stay with the status quo and see how things play out a little bit before we take any major steps.
Thanks.
Any other planning board members have a question, comment?
Nope.
All right, then I'll open this up to the general public. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to ask questions or have any comments about the proposed bylaw for accessory dwelling units? You can raise your hand. There's a way to do that in Zoom, or you could just unmute and speak up and I'll recognize you. I see Mr. Sarkis doesn't have his mute button on, but I assume that if he wanted to have said something, he would have.
I apologize for that.
No, don't apologize. All right, then. Katrina, help me out here. Can we just-
Now the board, if it wants to close the public hearing on this, they can vote to make a recommendation to town meeting on this proposal.
But this public
Gotcha.
hearing includes 2 more discussions, so we don't want to close it.
I think
right?
we should do them all together.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Thank you, guys. All right, then what unofficially, we'll consider this discussion of the ADU public hearing. Unless somebody has a strong opinion and wants to pop in a little later, we'll just move on to the next one.
And a side note, just for anyone out there that might listen or needs to know, they can always swing in, talk to me about this. It's fine. I'm also doing classes for CSL holders, building officials, and realtor groups to try and get the word out there.
Thank you. I just had something disappear from my, okay, there we go. All right, so the next bylaw that's part of this public hearing is the battery energy storage system bylaw. And I'll just preface this by saying battery energy storage systems are, you're probably familiar with home solar. And sometimes people that get solar panels also get a battery storage system so that they can store up the electricity they got from their solar panels during the day. And then if the grid goes down, they can operate parts of their electric circuitry in their house through a battery system. Well, the grid is found that, well, it's been found that you can have huge battery storage systems, huge compared to home systems, that can supplement the grid. And the people that own these big battery storage systems basically store electricity when the cost per kilowatt hour is low and then sell it back to the grid when the price is high and thereby make a profit. But it also does everybody a favor by leveling out the demands on the grid. And so this has become a thing around the world, and there's more and more interest in the United States. And so that prompted the idea of having, and then there's been some local interest in the parking lot of the Episcopalian Church, for example. So this proposed bylaw came from that sort of prompting. And then the commissioners, there are lots of other towns interested in the same thing. And Sam's been attending meetings and came up with this proposed bylaw. And Katrina, I wonder if you could just share it, put it up. Now I'm nervous that I don't have the latest version of everything. There we go. And this is available on the town website. If you want to, come back to it and dig into it more deeply, word for word. But we have been going back and forth, word for word, on this for some time, and we've gotten some clarifications over the last few months. And we think this is pretty good. So, Sam, any summary anything you want to add that I didn't kind of cover?
Nope, so we've made the amendments based on the group's discussion, some small tweaks here and there. One of the things that I want to let folks know that is usually, causes confusion with this. This is not something you'd have in a single or two or multifamily dwelling. This is massive sized batteries. They're delivered typically in large semi-trailer containers and stacked next to each other, in rows. They used to be done in larger buildings. Most places have gone to a containerized system where they can have shutoffs and individual sprinkler systems within the containers, helping contain anything, thermal runaway, which is where batteries heat up and each successive battery overheats and catches fire. This helps contain that. Then they can also take that container, remove it from site, and replace it with a functioning one. What the bylaw will do for us, currently they'd be allowed, whether we like it or not, as a protected use, because if it's tied into a utility and it's deemed a requirement for the public utility. much like a cell tower is allowed in a dead space for cell service, even if it wouldn't be in your cell zone. We just had that happen in Groveland, where someone, I think it was, I forget which cell carrier, plunked one right in the spot where we didn't allow them, and they hadn't as of right. Same thing with these. This gives us the protection to look at it from a site plan review standpoint, put in tree buffers, fencing, fire department access, require training to our fire departments, extra protection for wetlands. There's a litany of things that we can ask for. We just had this passed last year in Groveland. I was very proud to have it passed and have the Attorney General warn me that it is so encompassing that it borders on being restrictive. And as long as we don't use it to restrict it, it is fine. So it really opens the door for us to take a good scrutinizing look at every aspect of these things. The bylaw was worked on by myself, the electric light department in Groveland, a battery installer, and a fire protection engineer that was involved in writing NFPA 855, which relates to battery storage. So we had a pretty good crew with a good understanding. Sadly, I was probably the odd man out. I didn't know a lot of the time what the heck we were talking about. This is what we ended up with. And I think it does a pretty good job allowing us to have some say in how these go into the community and protect the surrounding area.
Yeah, so you didn't know much before, but now you're an expert.
Oh yeah. Now I know
That's-
slightly more than nothing.
No. That's what happens with these things. All right, planning board members, any questions or comments? Tim?
Yeah, just on a couple of things. I think the updates are great. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
On the definitions, I was just looking through them, and it says that the NFPA 855 definitions apply, unless it's stated otherwise in this definitions list on page 1. So one I had a question about was the actual definition of battery energy storage system. I wasn't following it because it's actually defined within battery energy storage management system, which is, I think, different than the energy storage system itself. I think the management system does these things that are described in the definition. So is the battery energy storage system defined in NFPA 855?
Yes, actually, and that's a good catch, because that parenthetical BESS does not belong there,
Yeah.
because
that's
that
what I
would be
figured.
for the
Okay.
battery energy storage system. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
So good catch.
Then I just had a question about participating property definition, Sam, which is a battery energy
Next
storage
page,
system.
Katrina.
Sorry, it's page 2.
Sorry, I was writing it down.
The participating property.
Yeah. It says it's the property where the system is hosted, or any real property that's subject to an agreement that provides for compensation to the landowner for the storage. So I was just wondering, what is this intended to encompass?
So with this, there is properties that may be surrounding the battery storage system that get payment for, you may need an additional
Access
road
or something like
access
that?
or
Sure, okay.
anything along those lines, that, yeah, they'd be part of that
Mm.
permitting process. So yeah, if there was an access road through, or some other reason, some sort of retention pond needed for stormwater management or things of that nature, where it just goes off the site where the storage system itself is, we wanted to capture those adjacent properties that
I see.
typically are owned by the same entity, but just in case they aren't, we got an opportunity to capture it. So
Okay.
it's likely an unused definition, but
Yeah,
I didn't- I was
that's
looking-
pretty clever.
Yes.
Oh, was that right?
I said that's clever.
Oh, as far as capturing it, I get that. I don't know if the monetary compensation is the key. It sounds like these are properties that support the system, but that don't actually host it. So I just had a question about that provides the payment of monetary compensation, because I guess if you read it literally, if someone wasn't getting paid for that use, they wouldn't be considered a participating property.
Yeah, but by
It might
having
be
this
if
in there,
the-
somebody's gonna at least get $5 out of the deal.
I don't know
Right.
why you'd participate if you weren't getting paid, but I guess
Well,
that's
you
a
could be a
potential.
a family situation,
Sure.
you can imagine it.
Oh, yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. But again, I doubt it would have, usually the entities coming in that put these in want to buy and own the property that they're on. They
Yep.
typically
Or
don't want to
long-term
lease it.
lease or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's a definition stolen out of NFPA.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Well, if it's out of the NFPA, that's fine then.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
don't love it or hate it, or I'm not tied to it, but yeah, that was the intent of it, is just to try and grab those adjacent properties if by some chance they weren't part of the, the land lease or other.
I see.
Like I said, I
Okay.
think it's pretty unlikely, but
I
someone
see
put it in there for a
that,
reason, so I'm sure it happened somewhere.
I see
Can I
that Deb
share my
has something else,
experience
but
with you?
yeah, in just a second, Mr. Crowe, just a sec.
Yep.
So Tim, did you have anything else?
Couple more things. I think on page 5, this is a good notion about notice to the fire department and the building commissioner in advance of the change in the type of batteries. Do you know if this is also something pulled from the NFPA?
Katrina, page 5, please.
Yeah, I don't remember strictly if it was, but it was something in talking with the fire chief and the fire engineer that we just thought it would be a good practice that if there's, along with permitting, we want to know about any changes, and then we also want to be informed and involved in the decommissioning. So
Yeah.
that way, there's always that list of, you got to contact, at least, fire department, myself, I forget who else we listed in there. But we wanted it to be very much not something that was overlooked and, oh, we didn't know you swapped out a burnt out cell, or because we want to be able to go there, take a look and see that, okay, if that cell did catch fire, the sprinkler went off, it leaks out of the container, what happened to that contaminated water?
Yeah.
And part of that should be addressed during the permitting stage, but we all know that stuff that's supposed to happen doesn't always happen. So we thought it was a good idea that if there is some sort of swap out, some sort of change for whatever reason, just give us a heads up. And if
I
we
think
want to come
it's-
look, we can.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I was thinking that we would want to be notified under other circumstances, like if they increase the size of the facility, as far as the output of the batteries and things like that. We'd probably want to be notified of that, to the extent that may be informative to people that fight the fires.
And that would be required during permitting. So they would have to amend their permit or get a
Amend
new
the per-
permit
I
to
get
add
it.
on. Yep,
Okay, all right. Just let me see if I have anything else, Sam.
sure.
Compliance. Yeah, I'm okay. Yep, that's it
Good.
for me.
Haven't forgotten about you, Mr. Crowe. Deb,
It's okay. I just thought I would share my experience in the 5 years I've owned that land in West Newbury. I have been contacted on several occasions by cell phone tower companies and these battery storage companies that were not interested in buying my land, just leasing it because of the overall cost that would require them to purchase. But the payments that they were offering are extremely significant, is how I'll put it. And that it makes you pause and think. And ultimately, I chose that it would not enhance, it would be enough of a negative on me selling houses to offset maybe what I could get in easy money up front. So
well,
I
that's
did
interesting.
not pursue that, but
Yeah.
they made it very clear to me that, and because I know you didn't have bylaws, that they were working under state and federal guidelines and that they felt like they could put almost anything they wanted, wherever they wanted, and get it passed. So
Wow.
it was a bit of an arrogant attitude, but at the same time, I think they probably would need to present that to a person that they're trying to sell on taking that land. But the battery storages, they wanted about an acre of land. And because I was right by the power lines, that made it even more
Right.
enticing to them.
Sure, sure.
If
Thank
if I may, Professor,
Yes, Mr. Sarkis.
my experience is exact same as Mike's. He described it perfectly.
Ah.
Exact same thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, this, this may come up. I don't know how much discussion we'll have at town meeting, but it's good to have this firsthand
Ray,
local knowledge.
could I
Yeah,
weigh
Deb,
in? Yeah.
go ahead.
So one of the other hats that I wear is I am on the vestry of All Saints Episcopal Church. And we've been under contract with Solvay Battery Company, who have met with a number of other churches who have land that they're not totally utilizing. And it's a very slow process because, as Mike pointed out, access to the power system is an essential consideration that they look at. But they would like very much to use the back parking lot in back of All Saints Church as a site. It's somewhere between 10,000 and 12,000 square feet that they're talking about. We do have neighbors on Felton Lane who it never occurred to me that anybody other than the owner of the property might be entitled to some benefit, financial or otherwise. But it's just, it is something that we need as more and more of us electrify our cars, and the system that they are talking about putting in is a lithium storage battery that could serve 1,200 homes.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So
If I can turn the discussion back to the actual bylaw, although I appreciate all this input from you, Deb, and Mike and John, which, like I said, could be important to town meeting discussions. But when it comes to the bylaw itself, I'm just wondering if any planning board members have anything else they care to discuss?
No.
No.
Katrina?
I have a question for Sam. I did look at the municipal law unit list under the Attorney General's website today, just to see what other towns in Massachusetts have adopted a battery storage system, because I hadn't heard of it before coming to West Newbury. And I noticed that I think one of the only towns east of Worcester is Groveland that has adopted it, and there's about 25 towns that have adopted it in Western Mass. Do you know why more towns in the western part of the state have acted on this before towns in the east part?
Not really. I know right now there's a city nearby that I can't really disclose who I've been talking to, but they are looking at potentially the largest installment in the United States
Whoa.
in our area. So that's a
Yes.
pretty substantial system.
Well,
So
there you
hooray,
go.
hooray for me and Groveland being ahead of the curve on the East Coast. You know, give myself a pat on the back for that one.
There you go. Well, maybe
But-
we'll all get that pat on the back. What I want to do now is see if there's any member of the public that has a question or a concern about this proposed bylaw. Again, you can raise your hand through Zoom, or you can unmute and speak up. Seeing none, then I propose we go to the third and final part of this public hearing when it comes to proposed amendments to the Town of West Newbury zoning bylaw. And that's the floodplain overlay district. Katrina, maybe you could just pull that up in case we need to flip back and forth. And Sam, is this something you know about?
Yep. So along with my commissioner hat, I am the floodplains administrator for the town as well. So
Oh, that's handy.
it
Wow.
is very handy.
Could you like,
Um,
I don't know, like leave the screen and then come back in with the different hat on or?
maybe I just do one of these.
Boots.
There you go. Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
he's got his sou'wester hat in there.
Now
Bag.
we're good to go. So why do we need to make a change here?
Because FEMA and the NFIP say so, is essentially what it comes down to.
Okay.
Nothing was wrong with our bylaw. They're changing the maps. They're changing some of the language in it in order to stay in the National Flood Insurance Program. We need to adopt the changes that they put forward. None of them really have a significant effect. A lot of it's clarification, a lot of it's map changes. We're getting new maps I think it's July 8th of this year, and we need to adopt this prior to that to stay in the program. Not staying in the program means that anyone in a floodplain that has insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program would no longer be eligible for that insurance and could be putting their mortgage in jeopardy, which is not what we want to do. The only substantial change that I made was the change from the planning board being the permit granting authority for floodplain permits, and gave it to the floodplain administrator, which is me, because I felt, one, I didn't know how versed you were in floodplain regulations. I'm very well versed. I've taught courses on them. The other thing that I got to brag about is DCR liked my suggestion so much they are going to try to get other towns to adopt it. What my suggestion does, not only, it's not an ego thing. I really don't want any more permitting authority. What I was looking at it as a contractor as well as a building commissioner. And one of the problems I saw as a contractor is I hire an engineer to prepare a bunch of documents, bring it to the planning board, assuming they approve it, and then I go back to the building commissioner / floodplains administrator for my permit. In changing this, I've added a number of criteria for the engineer that's already going to be hired to add to their documents. That cost will be probably the same or less than filing for a special permit through the planning board, and will save a number of months. So DCR was very happy that this makes the process quicker. It makes it more stringent, and it's as or more cost effective than the other way. So it's
I'm
kind
just
of-
looking at this. I'm just looking at this thing. It's a gift to the engineer too, because now the engineer knows what it is exactly you're looking for.
Yeah, and that's why it was just one of those. This really just makes sense, and I was a little reluctant to send it in because sometimes what really makes sense, sometimes doesn't. But they were very happy with the language I had. I won't take all the credit. I stole bits and pieces, as we do, from good language from other sources. And I think it's actually a really good change to, again, speed up the process, keep the costs down, and give us the protections we need for, protecting our floodplain and staying in the NFIP program. And again, they were excited about it. So I pulled this and put it back into Groveland as well. So
I assume that if FEMA is disbanded and no longer exists, we'll have to revisit the bylaw.
possibly could be something to do next spring.
Okay, all right. Planning board members, I apologize for being snarky. Planning board members, do you have any questions?
Just a couple of things, Ray, if you don't mind, in the nerdy area again.
Please.
So I'm looking at, let's see, it's section 8.1.7.
Yep.
That's where we are.
Yeah, and it's the reference to municipal inspections department and city engineer's office. Does that just need to be updated for our town?
Where are you?
2A, you see 2A on that page.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, stolen language.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so just, I just need to change that to the Inspectional Services Department and
Yep.
delete city engineer. Thank you again for the catch.
all right. And then 8.1.8, Sam, it's got a Groveland reference in it.
Yeah, I saw that
That would
one.
be
Oh,
the
you saw
second
that,
one.
okay.
DCR caught me on the floodplain, or the floodplain one as well, having a West Newbury. So that is pretty funny.
And other than that, I thought these were very good updates. I'm interested in seeing the maps. So
Cool.
this is good.
Thank you. And thanks for the catches. You know,
Sure.
it's amazing how many times you read things over and over and over, and
Yeah.
there's always still something.
Yep. No, this
So-
is pretty complicated. Okay. That's it for me.
Very
Awesome.
good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Other planning board members, Anne, Brian, Deb, Ted.
No,
No, thank you, Sam. These are great.
appreciate it. Yes.
Thanks.
Great, then I'll open it up to the public. Again, if you're interested or have a question about this proposed bylaw, you can unmute or raise your hand. Not seeing any, then I move we close the public hearing on these three proposed bylaw changes.
Second,
Any discussion on closing the public hearing? If not, all those in favor, Ray Cook, aye.
Ann Bardine, aye.
Tim Cronin, aye.
Deb Hamilton, I.
Brian Murphy.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone, and in particular, thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you. Glad we can bring some clarification, hopefully, to some confusing
Yeah.
sections.
Well
Now,
done,
Katrina,
Tim.
you mentioned, do we need to close the public hearing, but we haven't closed the agenda item yet.
Right,
Do we
so,
need to make a recommendation to the select board for the
yes.
article?
That would be, it's actually a recommendation to the town meeting residents, but you can address it to the select person and say, the planning board on such and such a date voted to make, I don't know how West Newbury does it. Do you make a positive recommendation, or do you actually say something about it? You can, for the floodplain one, you can say that we are making a motion to adopt it, subject to the change under section 817, et cetera.
Well,
Got you.
Well,
I don't know that we've done this in the past.
no,
Yeah,
no, these changes should be incorporated in the final document,
right.
and that would be submitted.
Maybe we
Right.
can make a
but
recommendation.
I can make the motion this way, perhaps. So I move that we recommend to the to the select board of the town of West Newbury that they endorse these changes, these bylaws and these amendments as discussed at the public hearing and as will be presented to town meeting. So I'm making a motion that the select board endorse these bylaws and
I'll
bylaw
that.
changes. I have a second from Deb Hamilton. Any discussion? Do people find that that's an appropriate motion to make at this point?
Yes.
Seems
Yes.
you. Okay. So all those in favor, Ray Cook, aye.
Ann Bardine, aye.
Tim Cronin, aye.
Deb Hamilton, I.
Yep. Brian Murphy, aye.
It's unanimous. Very good.
Mr. Chairman,
All right,
could I ask a question?
please.
Does the West Newbury Planning Board stand up at town meeting and make a recommendation?
Yes, at town meeting, I will stand up and make the motion.
Okay,
And by-
usually the planning board has a recommendation for each zoning amendment before town meeting. And so I'm just trying to decide when the West Newbury Planning Board usually does that.
I don't think that that's our tradition.
No. In this town, it's usually the select board and the finance committee that make those sorts of recommendations.
I
So,
think
so it's
so
mandated by state law that it's the planning board that makes the recommendation, and there's certain reasons why it's the planning board. Because
Right.
it says that, you know, an amendment, if it's voted down with a negative recommendation, the planning board can't come back before the town, you know, within a certain period. So just think about that. There is time still to make a recommendation, a full recommendation. But why don't I check into it?
Yeah,
before
because
next
that
public-
hasn't been our tradition, but it doesn't mean that we've always been doing everything exactly right. And if, yeah, I mean, my understanding has always been that, well, as Ann said, the finance committee always weighed in since I got here 30 years ago. And in more recent years, the select board has also been making their recommendations to approve or not. So, but the planning board hasn't, although by bringing the article and making the motion, we're sort of stating our recommendation. Brian?
Yeah, we move the article.
Yes.
And that I think is perhaps what Katrina is talking about. The selectmen
Right.
are going to agree or not agree with the article, but we move the article.
Right.
Right.
Yes, we'll make the
Yeah.
motion at town meeting.
Yes.
But I'm picking up from Katrina here that there's actually something more that's required of us by state law. And maybe that's
I
true.
don't think so.
Yeah, there is. You know what, if you don't
Well,
mind,
we can
go
talk
on
about
the
it. Let's put
agenda
this
and
on
I'll
the,
try and find it, the
yeah,
section.
let's put this on the agenda for next meeting to revisit this. If we need to have some motions and make a formal recommendation, we can do so at that time.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
At this point, what we're really doing is making sure that this goes to the select board so that it gets on the warrant,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
That's,
and well, and also the public hearing, of course, is required.
right. But we're moving it along on that timeline. If we have to do other stuff later, I think we can do it later.
Yes, and as is appropriate in the public hearing and as one of Tim's final acts here, I suppose. I mean, we do have changes that resulted from the public hearing
Yes.
that are going forward. So, I mean, that is the way the public hearing process is supposed to work.
Can you see this?
I can.
You cannot?
No, I can. Yes, I
Oh,
see. it.
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so this is section 5 of 40A. This is how to change your zoning bylaws. And this is what I'm referring to right down here. Except as provided herein, no zoning bylaw or amendment thereto shall be adopted or changed except by a 2/3 vote, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm sorry, a paragraph above. No vote to adopt thereto shall be taken until a report with recommendations by a planning board has been submitted to the town meeting. That's what I'm talking about. There's usually a report by the planning board. In some planning boards, it's a lengthy report. In my experience, it's just been a one line saying we vote a positive recommendation on this. And to the town meeting, it was very important whether or not the planning board backed the zoning, the proposed zoning or not. Some planning boards would give a negative recommendation to some proposed zoning amendments. And so that's what I'm referring to. And if you haven't done it through the years and you do it a different way, then that's fine. I don't think it'll upset the apple cart, but you may want to start doing that in the future.
We've never
Right.
done that.
Let's
Yeah.
Let's look at that next time.
Okay.
Once
Yeah,
we
let's
get
pick this
final
up next
language.
time, and it's a good catch, Katrina, because as long as I've been on this planning board, we have done our best to abide explicitly by the laws. We try to toe the line on all this stuff. So yeah, let's talk about
And
that.
yeah, I don't think you were doing anything.
Understood. No,
Not wrong
it's
either.
just if there's a way that we can do some things better, then we'll do that. So I believe we've addressed this. I assume Sam's gonna stick around a little bit to hear about our MBTA zoning.
He said no.
No?
No.
All right then, Commissioner,
Hungry.
thank you for your help tonight.
Thank you,
Thank
Sam.
you.
Appreciate
Have a
it.
good night, everyone.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right, next item on the agenda is to talk about the release of final lots and the posting of surety at Major Boyd Drive. And we've got Mr. Crow here, I see. Katrina, bring us up to date, and then Mr. Crow, if you want to add to something Katrina says, then I'll recognize you.
Sure. So, Mr. Crow came in, he is looking for the release of the last lot in the subdivision. If you remember, I believe there's 4 lots. One had an existing house on it. You've released 2 lots, and remember, each of them have 2 units each on each lot. There's 1 lot left. So if the board is going to entertain releasing this, then Mr. Crow has to post some kind of surety to cover the remainder of the subdivision, which still isn't complete. Because as you know, he has no bond. You've just been releasing lots. He has a covenant that you've been releasing. So I did ask Mr. Crow to talk with his engineer to see if he could give us an estimate of the cost of the remaining work left to be done so that we can have our engineer review that, make sure it's an accurate amount.
Good. Yeah, that strikes me as the way we've done things in the past. Mr. Crow, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that she summarized it quite well. Where I stand now, because we have done a preliminary as-built that was reviewed by Meridian back several months ago. We're going to just update that for the little bit that's been done since that point, and we'll be putting together a summary spreadsheet of the cost of doing the work. Primarily, the major thing that's left to be done is final paving, and then as-built plans, which are pretty straightforward since they've mostly been done. But for the most part, that's what's outstanding, and we expect to have something submitted over to Meridian by the end of this week, at least I hope by the end of the week, so that they can
Good.
review it. And then
And is there any work to be done on the trails?
nothing that's required by this, by the road bond. I've got a little bit just, which I said I would do because originally the agreement was that Essex County Trails would be doing the work and or maintaining. But I told them I would, on the finish of the last driveway going out there, just make it to be a level gravel path that goes alongside that driveway.
I appreciate that.
It'll be done in the springtime, but the rest of the trails, I mean, they're out there, they're existing. We did alter the trail easement, I think you're probably aware.
Yes.
Where we connected it into your town property, and that was done and recorded a few weeks ago.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, very good. Planning board members, do you have any questions for Katrina or Mr. Crow?
No.
No, process sounds good.
There is
Good.
no action before you tonight. Mr. Crow was just coming in so that we could get our ducks in order so that he was ready to go at the next meeting.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that very much. And Mr. Crow, I apologize. I could have taken this agenda item out of order. And then you wouldn't have had to sit through the through proposed bylaw changes. You've been very patient. I appreciate that.
Been fascinating.
Then we wouldn't have heard about the battery storage.
Yeah,
That's
we
right.
did, we did
Very
get some.
helpful. Very
That was
interesting.
helpful. That was good
Right?
information. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I knew these things were becoming more of an item. I didn't realize that there had been this much urgency already in West Newbury. So,
Well, I
Very
think
good, sir.
ultimately they scanned that section, the corridor with the power lines,
Oh, yeah.
looking for large raw land. And obviously I have about 30 acres that kind of border that corridor, so.
Yeah.
yeah, very good.
Thank
All right, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Crow,
you.
for accommodating the trail change too, to make it make sense. That Sawmill Brook connection is gonna be one that everybody's gonna enjoy. You've been wonderful to work with. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're
Yeah, I
welcome.
appreciate that. And I appreciate the little extra work on that gravel alongside that last driveway too. Thank you.
So I'll be back in 2 weeks, hopefully with a pretty simple document that approve and sign the last Form J. And at this point, I'll be selling one in right around the 1st of March, assuming nothing else goes wrong, and the other by the end of March. So
Very
Great.
good.
a little bit of good weather and I'll get that road finished and we'll be off and running.
Easy peasy right from the start, huh?
Yeah, oh, no problem.
Quite a 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, sir.
Okay, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, third item on the agenda is to talk about the MBTA zoning. And I'll start off. Katrina and Brian and I met with,
And Ted,
oh, and Ted, yeah. And we met this afternoon. And we talked about how to move forward here. Oh, and we also met with, why am I blanking? Wendy and Angus. And we talked about how best to proceed.
Mr.
And-
Chair, could I
Yeah.
just point out for anyone listening, there were 3 planning board members, but 1 member is an associate member and is not able to vote actually on the MBTA zoning or any kind of recommendation. And so it was not a quorum of planning board.
Thank you for that clarification. And I'm wondering if, Ted, you put the extra work in here. I wonder if you want to kind of summarize the meeting?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we talked about basically the goal here is to come up with a game plan for educating the community on facts surrounding the MBTA Communities Act, and help people to prepare for the town meeting, which it looks like will be maybe at the end of April, I think, to be scheduled, but in the next few months. So, we talked about a couple of different things. One is the content and the different resources we expect to have at our disposal for that. And then secondly, the marketing plan and various channels that we have to communicate that information. So, we were talking about social media, publishing this content to social media using traditional marketing channels like local newspaper, local radio, going into local establishments like the Food Mart, Town Hall, Nick's Place, so on and so forth, to post on bulletin boards. Direct mailers. So we're basically putting together a plan, it seems like, to do some print and direct mail to basically everyone in the community. And the idea, just to step back, is to send a high level kind of flyer, if you will, with basic information that then points back through perhaps a QR code, a URL. We haven't kind of gotten into those details, but points back to the West Newbury Town website, which will have far more detailed information. So that's just kind of like a teaser to get that out there. The other channel would be through digital means, like an email newsletter for folks that are signed up to receive communications from the town. Similar to the print direct mailer, the flyer, the email will be, I imagine, similar content, high level, pointing back to the website. So kind of a hub and spoke approach to this, trying to get the word out there, bring people back, and use the town website as the core hub with all the detailed information. Do you guys want me to talk about the 5 pieces of content, or the studies and such that Angus walked through?
Yes, why don't you do that? I was
Yeah.
thinking that we should do that.
So one is we should have, well, we have a water study that was done. This was before my time, but apparently that was done around this time last year. We have a fiscal impact study that I believe that's being finalized. Is that correct?
it's all
Yeah,
done.
yeah, we had a fiscal impact. Angus put together a fiscal impact, kind of like mini report a while back, and it's since been updated. And so the finalized version will be available to us and to the public soon.
Okay.
So I believe he was referring to the fiscal impact study done by FXM Associates.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
and that's finished.
Okay, that's finished. Okay. The traffic impact study is not finished. We just received, it sounds like we just received a draft of that I believe it was today or yesterday,
And by tomorrow or the end of the week, it should be done.
being reviewed. So that's a key piece of information that will help all of us, and then also be something that we can point the community back to. There are yield plans and a build out analysis I have in my notes here.
Yes, so
Looks like by the end of February.
yes, and this is something that the planning board members and members of the public might not yet be aware of. So Angus went ahead and asked the engineering company to do essentially a yield plan, 2 flavors for both sites. One would be under conventional development and the other would be under the open space preservation development bylaw. And the idea there being to see what could possibly happen to these parcels, which are very likely to be developed if the town, even if the town decides to turn down the MBTA zoning. And it's quite obvious to the people who've been digging into it that you could still have development with quite a number of units on each of these lots. Probably will eventually. One sooner than the other. So that's good news, though, that we'll have that additional information soon. I'm sorry, Ted, I kind of cut in there.
No, that was great. That was great. That was pretty much everything on my end. So our next step is to work with Katrina and folks in town to basically gather resources, put together the content, and then finalize the marketing plan to meet the timeline that we have here, leading up to, I believe looking at my schedule, some of the information sessions, the hearings that we're expecting in March, and then, leading up to the town meeting at the end of April. So we've got some work to do in the next month.
Yes, and one thing that'll add to that is there was a brief discussion about Facebook, and we all agreed that it wouldn't be prudent and would be beyond the scope of our capabilities to set up a Facebook page and then monitor all the discussions going back and forth with comments. In the end, what we think does work would be to have a Facebook posting that refers back to the town website for all the details, but to not have that Facebook posting have comments available to the posting. Not with the idea, and we have to make this very clear to anybody who asks, it's not that we're trying to repress comments from the public about it. What we're trying to do here is to provide the information to the public and also to encourage people to bring their comments to the forums, the public information sessions that are coming, because it's important for everybody who's participating to be able to hear from everybody. And sometimes things can get siloed, and of course things can go sideways and misinformation can get out there, and we just can't monitor that on Facebook. Did I get that right, Ted?
Absolutely. Yep.
But and then when it comes to the actual calendar, we did discuss this, and as Brian had indicated in other meetings, well, actually, let me do this in order. So the next big step, and by the way, I'll open this up, just see if anybody has a comment to add. The next big thing that we're going to be doing is having a joint meeting with the select board on the 12th. And the idea here is that we'll meet, we'll discuss the external reports, we'll discuss the pros and cons. After that joint discussion, then the select board, Wendy indicated that the select board felt upon further reflection that they don't actually want to vote on which of the 2 sites to recommend. It's their determination that that's more a planning board thing to do, but they expect to fully support whatever the planning board decides based on all the best information that we have and the input that we've gotten from the public, and in particular from the select board. That we will, as a planning board, take a vote on the 12th as to which of the 2 sites to recommend, and thereby incorporate into the proposed bylaw. Um, and I think there was another little bit of an agenda item after we do the vote. Katrina, what was that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the one thing that was mentioned that has changed is that I think at least the members today thought that March 18th would be the best day to open the public hearing for the
Yes, well,
MBTA.
I was going to go there next, thank you.
Oh,
But
okay.
as far as the meeting on the 12th, I thought there was something, and
Well, we'll have the two presentations for the fiscal impact study and the traffic impact study
right,
at
okay.
that meeting. And so they will be there to answer questions if the public shows up. And the board has to decide how best to use them, because I believe both of them, or one of them, fiscal impact study consultants, can come to another planning board meeting.
Yes,
It's up to the planning board to decide how to use them. Maybe just sit quietly, and if there's questions.
right. So after the meeting on the 12th, then we'll have our planning board meeting on the 18th. We'll have a little discussion about recommendations in the bylaws and then other things that come as the normal course of work. Nothing in particular with the MBTA on the 18th of February. And then as Brian had mentioned before and then discussed this afternoon, we think the best time to have the first informational meeting for the public about MBTA will be March 18th. And here what we'll do is we'll provide a synopsis of the external reports, not long presentations. I think Angus correctly mentioned a concern that if we go into a meeting and there's these long presentations, we don't actually get to hear back from the public, and that can be frustrating for people. So the idea on the 18th is that we do a synopsis of the external studies, mention that they've been done, what they concluded. Katrina was going to put together some brief slides that we can refer to, and then go straight into discussions with the public about the information. And if one of these items from an external report seems to be drawing particular attention, then we can dig into those items indicated by the public concern. Brian, yes.
Yeah, just to clarify, the intent that this is a public hearing. You mentioned information. We are.
I'm sorry. This would be the formal public hearing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for yeah, I hadn't written it down
Just a
properly.
matter of, for the record.
Yes, no, that's critical.
May I
we-
have a question
Go-
about the meeting on the 12th? Did you say the planning board will vote at that meeting?
Yes, the idea is that we vote at that meeting.
So I think we've already seen the fiscal impact. We haven't seen the traffic, and we haven't seen these drawings that Angus has.
Mr. Chairman,
Mission.
you will only be voting on which parcel.
No, I understand, but
Yes.
what I'm saying is if we're having presentations and seeing drawings for the first time, I would like to have as much information ahead of that meeting on the 12th as possible. If we're
Gotcha.
expected to vote, then.
Understood. So, yeah, the new information will be information about the traffic study. I don't think we're going to have the yield plan counts by the 12th. Those are due at the end of this month.
So the yield plan, the planning board does not need the yield plan to make a decision on the lots. They already know, they know how development happens in West Newbury. That's for the residents to see and to
Yes.
show that, it's going to be developed like this anyway.
Yes, but of course, in any of this stuff, the more information you have, the better off. If we had the actual counts between the two parcels by February 12th, that would be handy. I'm
Mhm.
just clarifying to
Not
the
going
planning
to,
board
okay.
that, yeah, that won't quite be there, but we'll have the traffic study. We do have the fiscal study. Water's been done. There were 5 external reports that we'll summarize. And again, discuss this with the select board. Yes, Brian?
Yeah, just for Ann, the yield plan is based on open space development.
Right.
Yeah, it's, we know what the potential drawings that our consultant did on the MBTA, how it might look. within that. This,
Right, for MBTA. No, I know.
yeah, this is going to be for if it was built out according to.
I understand. I
yeah.
understand. I'm just interested to see the difference myself.
It's-
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting. And to summarize what we heard today, as far as the traffic, is that it's not a big impact either way, or not a significant impact. I forget what the exact phrase, but we'll see the actual report.
Okay,
And the only difference, notable difference, was that the sight distances for naps comply in both directions, but for done, you only get the proper sight distance to the east, but not to the west, which is
Okay.
something that we could have.
it's intuitively
We could have
obvious.
guessed,
Yeah, yeah.
but
And-
it's
and
been
Mr.
confirmed by
Chairman,
the engineers. Yes,
pretty sure I will be able to get that to the planning board before the weekend.
Very
The finished traffic study, and the board already has the fiscal impact study.
Yeah, I
Is
remember
everyone
I've seen
aware
that.
of that?
Yeah, I've
Yep.
seen that. Yeah.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
So that you have more than enough time to look at it before the meeting next Wednesday.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And then, yeah, so the public hearing will be March 18th. And the plan at this point, and of course, things could change at the public hearing itself, but the idea at this point is that prior to the March 18th, Tuesday night, normal planning board meeting time, we try to keep our agenda clear. If there are a couple of short items that, would be good for expediting this or that, we might meet at 6:30 and deal with some normal planning board business.
Okay.
And then at 7 o'clock, we open the public hearing. And if things go well, we can probably get it done in the one meeting. And we won't have to extend the public hearing to a second meeting. So that's the idea. That's what we're hoping to do, to be efficient and get it done in one meeting. If it turns out we need to have it continue the public hearing to a second meeting, then we'll deal with it at the time. Have I got that right, Brian?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then going into April, so town meeting is April 28th. April 21st is Easter Monday, for those that matters to. We will have an information session, a pre-town meeting information session. Right now, we feel it's going to be focused on the MBTA business, but it could be on other articles coming before the town at town meeting as well.
And
But
that's,
basically, this pre-town meeting information session would be on Tuesday, April 15th.
In the annex.
Right,
Yeah, in person. Yeah.
yes,
is that a
and-
regular meeting date? It is, right?
It is.
yes.
Okay.
And yeah, Angus mentioned that they've started to do these pre-town meeting information sessions and that they've been helpful. And the idea here is that, yeah, that we can inform people
Yep.
just a couple of weeks before the actual town meeting. So hopefully that makes things go smoother.
Is that meeting in the annex, is that going to be a regular 7 o'clock meeting, or will it start earlier?
It's up to whether or not the board has any agenda items to deal with. They could always start before 7 o'clock if they had like an A&R.
Okay, thank you.
I also note that our first meeting in April is on April 1st. So you can start your planning now, whatever you want to try to pull over on us.
Mhm.
And this is not to be put in the minutes. This is just a side note, a personal item. I did once convince my wife that gullible is spelled with a Y because of its Greek origin. She did end up looking it up. It was unfair. English is her fourth language.
Exactly. It's not a fair fight. No.
Yeah,
Oh, good
but-
Lord.
yeah, I know. That's inappropriate for me to bring that up at our planning board meeting. I apologize. Um,
Well, it sounds like a great plan. Thank you.
so that's the plan.
Yeah, and I just must say, I'm delighted with Ted and Katrina
Here.
have been in touch and seem to be well along and with a very good strategy here. I'm very thankful.
And on a related note, I'm very grateful as well. On a related note, we made sure that Ted was aware of how the process worked with getting signatures, just in case he decides to take the plunge. And I think we can all assure him that the actual act of voting is very satisfying and very rewarding to move up to that next level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was thinking,
Fre-
you know what we
fresh-
need, Katrina? We need some sort of a wooden plaque in the planning board office with the names and terms of everybody who's been on the planning board as far back as we can figure it out. I think that would be really fun to have.
Has someone kept a list of them?
Well,
Oh,
I'm
we
sure
could
they're in
figure
the
it
town
out.
reports. They've got to be in the report.
Oh yeah, we could figure it out. Wouldn't take much.
Very funny. So Ted, you can also,
Funny.
get a copy of the ballot with your name on it to show your children. That's very exciting.
Well, we've had some great planning board members over the years.
Yes.
So
We
we
still
have.
do.
So,
Still do.
Mr. Chairman, we still have an agenda
Yeah,
item.
let's
we
reminisce
we
another
gotta-
time, please.
Sorry,
Can I-
that was out of order.
Can I actually ask a quick question before we move to the last agenda item? So regarding the timeline, just to make sure I'm clear on what you all would recommend regarding like the delivery of these communications, direct mail, email, so on and so forth. So we have we have public hearing on the March 18th, but then we have the pre-town meeting on April 15th. So do we
Yes,
want
but
to get
before that, I think that the hot item to work out is the flyer. And Katrina had some ideas and some resources for putting together a nice flyer. Because I think that flyer sets the stage for everything else. And you may have already left this afternoon.
Yeah.
We think that there's money for the mailing, direct
Mhm.
mail. And you were there when we talked about how to get it out to the listserv, to the people in town who signed up.
We didn't talk about the timing, but Ted, you and I can talk about that. If the board agrees, I think it's best to send out the direct mailing just a week, no more than 2 weeks before the actual vote, town meeting. So in that last 2-week period, do the mailing.
That's what I was thinking. That's where my question was coming from. I didn't
Actually,
think we wanted to send it too early because then it's going to get pushed to the side and people will
Right.
forget about it.
But what
Agreed,
about
but-
sending it even before the public hearing, so people know what the hearing is about? I think
it's wasted then. I think this isn't to get information out as much as it's to get people to come to the town meeting.
but if they come and they haven't been, this is just, I'm
I'm
not
thinking
arguing with you. I'm
probably
trying to
that-
bring some points up. If they come to the town meeting and they haven't been to the public hearing and they haven't been to the information session, then we're gonna litigate that all again on town meeting floor. We kind of want to avoid that.
I
Right.
think the sweet spot here is prior to the information session. Because that information session is 2 weeks before the spring town meeting.
Yes.
And I think that would encourage interested people to at least attend that.
We
And
need to
yet
look at
still
where
not
this,
be so far in advance of the town meeting that people kind of show
I mean,
us.
we can also leverage an email as well as social media, a post to let people know about the public
Remind
hearing
them.
on March 18th. That's a no cost effort
Okay.
to do that.
yes.
And then do the mailer with all of the detailed information post public hearing pre-town meeting, which would be on April 15th.
So here's a question. If Easter Monday is the 21st, that means Easter's the 20th. Is the preceding week school vacation week? Or is that after Easter?
After Easter.
Okay, so the information session is before the vacation. Okay.
Good. And I think other planning board members, do you concur with me that we feel like Katrina and Ted are working well and we can trust them to work out more details?
Yeah, got the content and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah,
Definitely. No, I appreciate the effort. This is
Very
great.
much.
it is. It's great.
Good, thank you.
All right then, next, agenda item, is a preliminary discussion, with Brian, I guess sort of Brian's idea here, which I wholeheartedly endorse, about maybe, modifying the reduced frontage lot language to remove some ambiguity and better express sort of the tradition in town about reduced frontage lots. Have I got that right, Brian, as sort of an
Yeah,
intro?
yeah, yeah, if I may.
Please.
You know, this relates to, it's on,
Middle Street.
it's on page 22 of the
Yes.
zoning bylaw, and it's,
5.2.1 or something like that,
yeah, and it's
5.3.1.
section C, which says not more than 2 reduced frontage lots shall have abutting frontage. So, you know, we've just seen the application on Middle Street, which has been withdrawn, that had a reduced frontage lot on either side of a lot with legal frontage. The attorney said several times, well, if you don't like it, you should just strike it. And, you know, from your bylaw, as we questioned how this looked and then how it felt in the neighborhood and whatnot. And it got me to thinking that, you know, we should talk about this. You know, I don't know if we want to come to a decision tonight because we only have 2 days before the warrant article closes.
We do.
But it occurred to me that it's fresh in our minds and we should just have you know, spend a few minutes talking about it. Now, I will say, to my knowledge, we've only seen this once before, and it was down the road on Indian Hill Street that this was used. And I was on the board at the time. I think Ann was, and Ray, you might have been. I'm not
Yeah, I
sure.
think so.
Yes,
And there were a couple of common driveways involved, and in that case, I think it actually worked out very well.
right.
This is a different scenario because there were no common driveways, and
Yeah,
it was pretty obvious what was happening there on Middle Street. So you know, I don't know. I'm not suggesting that we have to strike it, but I just thought we should have a little airing of opinion here.
so
So
Brian,
are you saying the possibility of striking the whole reduced frontage lot section?
No,
you're talking about a different place. I thought you were talking about this 5.2, but what are you talking, what's your citation, Brian? See, I
It's-
think if we strike it, they'll try to put 4 of them in a row.
no, it's 5.2
Okay,
C.
so where's 5.2C?
Not
Well,
more than 2 reduced frontage lots shall
No,
have
I see.
abutting frontage.
yeah, I
Oh,
think.
3,
in-
it's 3 in the
in
version I'm
new-
looking at.
in the new reconfiguration of the bylaws.
Oh, well, I must have
Okay, yeah.
an older
So
version.
I
It's
was looking at this little section, and I'd like to I think we should consider making first of all, some corrections and some graphic changes to this. And maybe what we should do is, we can talk about this tonight if you want to. I don't know what time it is. We can put this on a future agenda. First of all, we need to correct the spelling of dimensional after 5.2 to make it DIM.
Yeah.
If you look above at 5.1, if you just scroll up and so that whole page shows, please, Katrina, could you do that? Or no, up to show, the other way to show 5.1, yeah. So in that case, it says table 5.1 dimensional control, and there's the table.
Yeah.
I would like to then, that it's fine to say reduce, and above that, it's a strange page break. What's the very last thing on the page above it?
Table of dimensional. control.
Okay, so it says table of dimensional control and then has the amendments, right? So to make this parallel, as the professor would say, we should then say 5.2, reduce frontage lot special permit, go directly to that amendment parenthetical stuff. And then that first sentence should follow the table. There are no footnotes. These are not footnotes. These are the criteria. We should move
Yes.
the sentence that says the planning board may authorize a reduced frontage lot. pursuant to the grant of special permit, subject to the following criteria, and lists the criteria first of all. So I
Yes.
think it's just graphically clearer that way, that these are criteria, not footnotes, which is irrelevant to makes it sound like this is de minimis.
Yes, yes, yes.
I think we can talk about whether, how many abutting lots
Well,
there
it's
could be.
something I want to
But I
point
would,
out.
I want to look at the dimensions, because numbers are kind of a nice thing to have.
Mhm.
So for instance, in the normal zoning, it's 2, 2, and 150. Here it's 1, 1, and 1. Well, in residence C, that means the reduced frontage is 2/3 of the regular frontage, but it's half for A and B. That seems kind of odd to me. And I think it
Yes.
might be worth thinking about those numbers
Yes.
in
That's a good
addition
point.
to thinking
Yeah.
about the abutting stuff.
Well, not only that.
And
but
I also, but we need to stress too, and I think we do, I mean, this is a special permit. It may be authorized. There's no guarantee that if you follow all these things, it may still not be appropriate.
Mhm.
And so maybe there's other language that needs to be added, but I think special permits you have to fulfill all the criteria of a special permit, right?
Yes, and not only that, I also wanted to point out, it says not more than 2 reduced frontage lots shall have abutting frontage. But that's being interpreted, was interpreted by this applicant, is that the reduced frontage lots had to be separated. Right?
Yeah.
I
Doesn't
mean,
that-
Yes.
that
do we
mean-
really want, I mean, because you could say no reduced frontage lot shall abut another reduced frontage lot.
But again, I mean, Brian's striking that idea, going back to Indian Hill Street. What's the point of that? I think some of them do abut on Indian Hill Street, in fact, or maybe not, maybe they're
Well,
interspersed.
the current
I-
language, I contend that the current language allows it.
Well,
And
on
what-
Indian
what
Hill,
Oh, that they could abut, you're right. It only.
Yes, and what I would
Yes.
propose here is tweaking that language to make it clear that, no, you can't. So if you buy a parcel and you've got reduced frontage lots abutting your frontage on both sides, then you might not be able to do the reduced frontage lot for that reason. See what I'm saying?
No. no.
So on Zero Middle Street, for example, if on either side of the frontage of Zero Middle Street
Oh, I see,
before
yes,
it's
right.
divided, if those were reduced frontage lots,
Mhm.
then the only way to do this, would be to have regular frontage, reduced frontage in the middle, and regular frontage. You couldn't have 2 reduced frontage in a row.
Even if it were somebody else's property. Is that what you're saying?
Right,
Got it.
right. So maybe that's something we'd want to consider.
Yeah.
Let me just say that I think this is all good, and I think that we should do it. I do think that we don't have enough time to do it for Springtown meeting of this year, though.
No, because we'd have to have a public hearing.
Right.
Yes, well, for one
yes,
thing.
of course,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, all right.
But
good.
still, we should put this on the not too far back burner while it's fresh in our minds and get it cleaned up.
Yes, and the applicants withdrew without prejudice,
Right.
so they could come back at any time.
Oh,
Sure.
I'm sure they're contemplating something.
So if there's a way for us to make this less ambiguous, we're doing everybody a favor.
Yes.
And the sooner we get it done, i.e. fall town meeting, special town meeting, which is in the fall of 2025, then
Right.
I think we should aim to have something ready by then.
Yeah, definitely.
You
I
know,
think-
I will look forward to it because I will learn more about the reason why the planning board likes some of the special permit applications before them and not others. And so I think I will learn a lot, and I'm glad that we're not I thought it was going to be an easier fix, but now we can spend some time on it, and maybe we can write something that is just a much better section of the bylaw than this is written.
Katrina, as long as I've been on this board, one of the things that's impressed me is we've been trying to constantly make the bylaw better by getting rid of ambiguity and by being clearer, because it
Mhm.
does everybody a favor. And it makes our jobs easier because decisions are easier to make when you've got proper language and guidance. So yeah, why don't we put this, I don't know what we have for agenda items for our next meeting.
You know
Well-
what? I'm gonna make a note here to create a timeline so that we don't drop this, because we are busy and it's easy to drop things. We'll
Good.
create a timeline so that we can be sure it gets on the agenda at certain throughout the summer and we can work on it.
Good, that's good.
I
can
think
tweak.
I'm delighted. It needs some tweaking. How much and how far, that's what we gotta work through.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought about what Ann brought up about the, lot frontage and whatnot.
I think that's a very good point to think
It
through.
is, yeah, I think it's a very good point. Yeah,
Well, it's worth talking about anyway.
Yes,
exactly. All right
Okay.
then. Let me
Thank you.
jump back here and take another look at the agenda. All right, so that takes care of the main agenda items, and we're down to general business. And we've got minutes for December 3, 2024.
Are you asking me for this?
I'm looking to,
Because I do have them.
good. So you get them up before December 3.
I have to say, you are much better at sharing than I am.
Oh, I don't know about that.
We'll talk to your various mothers
But
about
if you come over, I'll let you play with my toy trains. All right then. Here are the minutes. Anybody have any corrections to page 1? Oh, well, first of all, can everybody see the minutes well
Yes.
enough?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, good.
Yep.
So page 1, any changes?
Nope.
No,
no,
Very good. Page 2.
Good.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
okay, yep,
Very good. And there is okay, so I move that we accept the December 3rd meeting minutes as drafted.
second,
Any discussion? All those in favor, Ray Cook, aye.
And Bardine, I.
Tim Cronin, aye.
Deb Hamilton, I.
Brian Murphy, aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Correspondence, we did have a couple little things, didn't we?
We did just receive something today. It's a notice of a joint public hearing for the city of Newburyport, and it's for a proposed zoning amendment that would create a Brown School overlay district to increase the permissible multifamily residential density and modify other parameters.
Oh, all right. Very
Them.
good. Thank you.
Let them hash that one out.
Yeah.
Under administrative details, with respect to Zero Middle Street, release of the consultant fund and the remaining balance. Katrina?
Okay, so this one, I guess we're just, I would suggest just waiting on this. The attorney for the Zero Middle Street application did reach out to me. She wanted to meet with a couple of the members of the board that expressed, well, they did not like the last application and would have voted against it. They preferred not to just meet separately from the rest of the board, although it was no violation of the open meeting notice. But I'm just waiting for her to get back to me. I did tell her in that case, we could keep the consultant funds for the new application. And so I don't know what's going to happen at this point.
All
And
right.
Did
Well,
ask for her to send a letter asking for the release of those funds. And so we could just wait for that to come to us.
well, if nobody objects, I think we should just wait on that.
Yeah, and we should make sure that we've gotten all the bills from Meridian.
And
Okay,
I
good.
also, I think I would, she didn't ask to meet with me, but if she did, I think I would be uncomfortable as
Oh, yeah.
well. I think that's better as part of a,
Well, I'll just say, I I think as chair, Ray, you certainly could have met with her. But I think the ask for the other comments was not proper.
Let me ask, planning board members, let me ask you this. I mean, couldn't we have an informal meeting?
Yeah, I
Like
mean, that's
a
the whole,
sort
well,
of a pre-application?
exactly. I mean, that
yeah.
was my thought was that that's exactly what the old pre-application meeting is all about. We just did that with those folks, you know, a week at the last meeting and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I
and
think
that
there were-
was suggested to the.
No, I know. I think there were seemed to me there were some sequencing decisions about that, the way that whole thing was handled on there and that didn't serve their client well. I'll just say that.
Very good. All right, good. So that's good. All right. By the way, the next general business item is items not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. And I read through the open meeting laws and this is anything of substance is discouraged. And in fact, we're not supposed to really have an items not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting.
Do you want me to just get rid of that?
No, let's keep it,
And
but
never use it.
just, you know, with notice that, yeah, what's the word deprecated is coming to mind, but in other words, we really shouldn't use this for anything substantial.
Right. That's when you
Yeah.
tell your gullible story.
There you go, with the why.
Yeah,
Yeah, what's not anticipated is that I would tell that story.
exactly.
Yeah. But understanding that, I do think it's appropriate under this agenda item, if somebody has anything that they think we should discuss at the next meeting that we haven't been talking about at this meeting. No? Okay.
Oh, it
Well,
seems-
with that, then I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Have a second from Ann Bardine. All those in favor, Ray Cook, aye.
And
Yep.
Bardine, aye.
Tim
Ray
Cronin,
Murphy,
aye.
Deb Hamilton, I.
Thank you very much. Ted, you get a lot of signatures from here if you bring in some sheets. If you decided that was something that you wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah,
Although, you know what?
I gotta sleep on it.
Yeah, but also, and actually, I do think we adjourned, but this should be something that we discuss well, here now I'm speaking. It's not part of the meeting. I'm speaking to Katrina. Katrina, at the next meeting, let's discuss the filling the vacancy that Tim's going to leave. Because Ted, it's perfectly
It
acceptable.
isn't until May, right?
Right, we've got some
Right.
time.
Yeah, I got some time.
May.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly acceptable, Ted, to stay the associate member if you're more comfortable with that too. It's not
Yeah.
like you're expected to step up or step away.
Right.
I mean, you're already an asset to the planning board. So thank you. for that.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Good. All right, folks.
All right.
All right. Good
Have
night.
a good
everyone.
evening.
everybody. Thank you very
Good night.
much.